A young Apache girl was sold in a cage. What one man did next defied the entire West. The sun had barely risen, but the town square was already bustling with activity. Dust swirled in the hot morning air, carrying the faint smell of leather, sweat, and smoke from nearby cooking fires. Wooden stalls lined the sides of the square, each one holding goods for sale, loose fabrics, handmade tools, and the occasional exotic item brought in from faraway lands. Merchants shouted over each other, calling out the prices of their wares. Horses neighed, tied to posts along the edges of the square, their owners busy bartering with travelers passing through. In the center of all this noise and chaos, there was a small cage. It was crudely made from thin wooden bars, big enough for only one person to sit inside. Inside that cage sat a young Apache girl. Breaths, her dark hair fell in tangles around her small, dirt-streaked face. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, but also a quiet spark of defiance. She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible. She didn't understand why she was here or what would happen to her. She only knew that her world had changed forever in the worst way possible. The events that led to this moment had been sudden and brutal. Just weeks before, her family had been living peacefully on the edge of their village, raising crops and tending to livestock. Her days had been full of running through the open plains, helping her mother cook, and listening to the stories her father told her at night about their ancestors. She had laughed, played, and felt safe. But one night her village was attacked by a group of armed men. Fires were set to homes, and families were torn apart. Amid the chaos, she had been captured and forced into a world she had never imagined. One where she was treated as nothing more than an object to be bought and sold. The trader who had brought her to the town square was a man who had made a living by selling people like animals. He was tall and gaunt, with sharp eyes that seemed to look right through anyone who stood before him. He walked past the cages, inspecting the captives as if he were choosing cattle for a market. When he stopped in front of the young Apache girl, he tapped his chin thoughtfully. Then, with a sharp gesture, he motioned for the crowd to gather. People began to gather, drawn by curiosity and a sense of excitement. They murmured among themselves, trying to guess the price she would fetch. Some whispered about her youth, others about her origins, but none questioned the morality of the act. In this town, this kind of thing was tragically considered normal. Children and adults alike stood at the edges of the square, craning their necks to get a better view. Some merchants paused their business to watch, while others kept haggling, pretending not to care. The young girl tried to shrink further into the corner of her cage, but there was nowhere to hide. She had no weapon, no friend, no protector. The only thing she had was her will to survive. She whispered a silent prayer to the spirits of her ancestors, hoping they could see her and guide her through this nightmare. Her lips trembled as she held on to that tiny hope, clinging to it like a lifeline. Among the crowd, there was one man who did not whisper, who did not laugh or comment. He was a rancher, known in the region for his strong sense of justice and his reputation for honesty. His clothes were simple and dusty from the trail he had ridden in on, but there was a weight to his presence that made people instinctively step aside. He watched the young girl, his jaw tight, his eyes narrowing. Every detail of her situation burned into his mind. The way her fingers gripped the wooden bars, the fear in her eyes, the trembling of her small body. The trader began the auction with a loud voice, calling out the starting price. "Who will give the first coin for this fine young girl?" he shouted. Some of the onlookers laughed. Others hesitated, unsure if they could afford her. The girl's stomach sank. She realized that, at that moment, she had no control over her life. Her freedom, her dignity, her future, all of it depended on the whims of strangers who had gathered to decide her fate. As the bidding started, it became clear that the crowd saw her not as a human being, but as a commodity. People shouted their offers, raising coins and arguing over the value. The girl could barely breathe, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. Each new offer felt like a hammer striking her spirit. She closed her eyes, wishing desperately that she could disappear, that she could somehow vanish from this cruel reality. The rancher remained silent, observing everything. He did not move to bid immediately. Instead, he studied the girl, memorizing the details of her face, her posture, the fear that seemed to weigh down her tiny frame. He could see the innocence in her eyes, the humanity that no one else seemed to recognize, Brett. And he felt a burning anger inside him, not just at the traitor, but at an entire society that allowed such things to happen. Around him, the crowd grew louder, more impatient. Some began to grow restless, complaining about the delay in the auction. "Come on! Let's get this over with!" one man shouted. "I've got other business to attend to." Another laughed, shaking his head at the girl. "She's just a child." Breath. "Doesn't matter whose hands she ends up in." Their words made the rancher's blood boil. How could people speak so casually about someone's life, as if it were nothing more than a price tag? The young girl, sensing the building tension, hugged herself tighter. Her thoughts raced. Best. She tried to remember the stories her father had told her, stories about bravery and cleverness, about spirits who protected those who were pure of heart. She told herself she had to stay strong, that somehow, someone would come to save her. Deep down, she clung to the faint hope that she had not been completely abandoned in the world. The traitor, noticing the hesitation among the crowd, raised his voice even higher. "Who will pay more? Don't be shy. The first bid sets the tone." He glanced at the rancher, his eyes narrowing. "And you there," he said sharply, pointing with a crooked finger. "Don't just stand there gawking. Do you want her or not?" The rancher took a slow, deliberate step forward. Psh! He knew that what he was about to do would shock everyone, and perhaps even put him in danger. But he also knew that he could not stand by and watch an innocent child be treated like property. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of coins. He stepped closer to the cage, his eyes locked on the girl. He did not speak immediately, letting the crowd watch in suspense. Finally he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Buy. I will pay the asking price. This girl will go with me." Bud. A hush fell over the square. The crowd looked at him in disbelief. Some laughed nervously, thinking he must be joking. Others whispered among themselves, trying to understand what had just happened. The traitor, taken aback, studied the rancher carefully. He had never encountered someone who would so openly challenge the norm, who would put morality above profit. The girl's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt a glimmer of hope. Rasp, someone, an adult stranger, was willing to stand up for her, to recognize her humanity. Her lips quivered, and she whispered a silent thank you to herself. She did not fully understand why this man would risk so much for her, but she felt an instinctive trust growing in her heart. The transaction was completed quickly, but deliberately. The rancher handed over the coins, counting each one carefully. The traitor, still suspicious, unlocked the cage and stepped back. The young girl hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should move. But when she saw the rancher holding out his hand with a gentle, encouraging smile, she finally stepped out of the cage. Her legs were weak and her arms shook, but she kept moving, driven by a mix of fear and cautious hope. As she stepped into the open square, the crowd murmured. Some stared in admiration, others in anger. But the rancher did not pay attention to them. But His focus was solely on the girl. He guided her gently away from the center of the square, shielding her from the curious eyes and whispered comments. Brave Reese. Each step they took felt like a small victory against the injustice that had surrounded her only moments before. As they moved away, the girl dared to glance at the crowd one last time. Break. She saw faces that reflected disbelief, faces that reflected greed, and a few that reflected silent respect. But she also felt a warmth in her chest that had been missing for a long time. The warmth of someone acting out of pure compassion, someone willing to risk everything to do what was right.
That day, the young Apache girl's life began to change.
For the first time since she had been taken from her village, she felt a sense of safety, a sense of hope. She did not yet know what challenges lay ahead, or how difficult the journey to true safety would be. But she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer alone. There was one person in the world who saw her not as property, but as a human being worthy of protection and care. The rancher led her away from the square and toward the hills beyond the town, where the dust of the market could no longer reach them. He rode his horse slowly, allowing the girl to keep pace. Every now and then he glanced at her, checking that she was keeping up, that she was not overwhelmed by fear. She, in turn, began to speak softly, telling him fragments of her story, her life, and the family she had lost. The words were halting at first, but as the minutes passed, she found a small measure of courage, strengthened by the knowledge that she was finally free from immediate danger. In the distance, the town faded into a haze of heat and dust.
The girl looked back one more time, and the image of the cage, the crowd, and the traitor lingered in her mind. But she did not feel the same helplessness she had felt before.
She had been rescued, and for now, that was enough. The journey had just begun, but the first step towards safety, dignity, and freedom had been taken. The rancher had acted when no one else dared, and his courage had given the girl a chance at life once more. And somewhere deep inside, she realized that the act of one person standing up for what was right could change everything. The rancher and the young Apache girl moved quickly out of the town square, taking a narrow dirt path that led toward the hills on the outskirts of the settlement. The sun was climbing higher, casting a harsh light across the barren landscape. Dust swirled around their feet and hooves, and the distant calls of birds echoed across the empty plains. The girl held onto her small bundle of belongings, a few pieces of cloth and a little water the rancher had given her, and walked carefully beside the man who had saved her. At first, she was silent. Her eyes darted nervously to every shadow and every figure they passed. Desperation. It was not used to freedom. It was confusing, almost frightening. For weeks, all she had known was confinement, harsh treatment, and fear. But as she looked at the rancher, she began to notice the calm in his eyes, the steady way he carried himself, and the gentle manner in which he spoke. He did not see her as property or a burden. He saw her as a human being, worthy of safety and care. The rancher noticed her hesitance. "It's all right," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of reassurance. "Prime.
You're safe now. No one can hurt you here."
The girl nodded slowly, but she did not speak. Trust was something she had lost long ago, and it would take time to rebuild. She followed his lead, keeping her steps careful as they wound their way through the rocky hills. Every so often, the rancher would glance back at her, checking that she was keeping pace. When she stumbled on the uneven ground, he reached out his hand to steady her. As they moved further from the town, the air began to change. The dust of the marketplace gave way to the fresher, cooler air of the hills. Birds sang from high perches, and small animals darted between rocks and bushes. The rancher led the girl toward a hidden stream, where they could refill her water and rest for a moment. She hesitated before drinking, unsure if this kindness was real. But when she saw him drink first and smile encouragingly, she finally bent down and took a small sip. The cool water was refreshing, washing away some of the fear that had held her for so long. The rancher had planned this journey carefully. He knew the town authorities would not approve of what he had done, and he expected that some people might follow them, trying to reclaim the girl. He also knew that the land they were crossing was not entirely safe. There were wild animals, unpredictable weather, and strangers who might not welcome them. But he was determined. He could not, in good conscience, allow this child to be returned to a life of suffering. As they walked, the rancher began to speak gently, trying to make the girl feel more comfortable.
You don't have to be afraid of me, he said. I won't hurt you. I want to help you, and I will do whatever I can to keep you safe.
The girl's eyes flickered up at him. Why are you helping me? She asked softly, her voice barely audible. He smiled faintly, understanding the question. Because it's the right thing to do, he replied simply. No one deserves to be treated like property. No one deserves to be afraid for their life just because of who they are. The girl considered his words. They were different from anything she had heard before. Most adults she had encountered either ignored her or treated her harshly. But this man, he was different. Slowly, she began to feel a small sense of hope, the first real hope she had felt in weeks. The journey was not easy. They had to move quietly and avoid roads where travelers or lawmen might see them. Each time they heard the distant sound of horses or shouting, the girl would freeze, her heart pounding in fear. The rancher would place a steadying hand on her shoulder and guide her to a safer path. He taught her to move silently, to watch for dangers in the landscape, and to trust her instincts. She learned quickly, driven by the need to survive and by the quiet strength of the man who protected her. One evening, as the sun began to set behind the hills, the rancher found a small, sheltered cave for them to rest. He built a small fire outside and sat beside it, keeping watch while the girl rested. She curled up on a blanket he had provided, still wary but feeling a little safer in his presence. The flickering firelight cast shadows across her face, and for the first time in a long while she allowed herself to relax slightly. The rancher did not speak much at first, letting her regain her strength, but after a while he asked gently, "Do you want to tell me about your family, about your village?"
The girl hesitated.
Memories were painful, filled with loss and fear, but the rancher's calm and patient demeanor gave her courage. She began slowly, describing her home, the people she loved, and the life she had lost. Her voice was soft, trembling at times, but the rancher listened carefully, never interrupting or judging. As she spoke, the rancher shared small pieces of his own life too. He told her about his ranch, the animals he cared for, and the values he lived by: honesty, respect, and courage. He did not boast or lecture, he simply shared, showing her that there were people who lived by principles, people who could be trusted. Days passed as they continued their journey. They traveled through hidden paths in the hills, crossed small streams, and avoided main roads. Each day the girl grew stronger, more confident. She learned how to read the signs in the land tracks in the dust, birds flying overhead, the movement of animals, and began to understand the world around her in a way she had never had the chance to before. The rancher also taught her practical skills. He showed her how to start a fire safely, how to find edible plants, and how to care for minor injuries. He encouraged her to speak up, to ask questions, and to share her thoughts. Slowly, the girl began to smile again, her laughter returning in small bursts when something surprised or delighted her. The sound was like music to the rancher's ears, a sign that she was healing, even in the midst of the challenges they faced. But the journey was not without danger. One afternoon they came across a group of men riding through the hills. The rancher quickly hid the girl behind a boulder and crouched low, signaling her to stay silent. He knew that if the men saw her, they might try to take her back. The men rode past, unaware of the small human figures hiding in the shadows. The girl held her breath, feeling her heart race, and the rancher waited until they were safely out of sight before allowing her to move again. Breaths.
"See?" he whispered. "You are safe if you stay alert."
You are learning quickly, and that makes all the difference. The girl nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. She was beginning to understand that survival required both courage and intelligence. The rancher's guidance gave her a sense of control she had never felt before. For the first time, she realized that she was not completely powerless. Along the way, the rancher also taught her about trust, not just in him, but in herself. He encouraged her to make small decisions, to take the lead when appropriate, and to speak up when she felt uncertain. Each small success built her confidence, helping her see that she could navigate the world and protect herself, even in dangerous situations. One evening, as they sat by a river to rest, the girl looked at the rancher with newfound respect. Thank you, she said softly. I don't know how to repay you. The rancher smiled, shaking his head gently. You don't need to repay me, he said. Helping someone in need is reward enough. The important thing is that you are safe, and you can have a chance at a better life. As they continued their journey, the girl began to talk more openly. She shared her dreams, her fears, and the small joys she remembered from her village. She told the rancher about the games she used to play, the songs she loved, and the stories her parents had told her at night. Each story was a thread that mended her broken spirit, and the rancher listened with patience and care, acknowledging her pain and her courage.
The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day.
The girl began to rely on him not only for protection but also for guidance and comfort. And the rancher, in turn, felt a deep sense of responsibility and connection. He had rescued her from immediate danger, but he also knew that true safety would require patience, skill, and continued care. As they approached the edge of the hills near Apache territory, the rancher became more cautious. He knew that others might be searching for the girl, and he wanted to ensure her safe passage. He scouted the paths ahead, avoided main roads, and moved quietly.
Each day brought them closer to safety, but also reminded them of the dangers that still existed. Despite the risks, the girl's courage grew.
She no longer flinched at every sound or shadow. She began to trust her instincts, to follow the rancher's guidance, and to believe that she could survive. The journey was still difficult, but the fear that had once consumed her was slowly being replaced by hope, courage, and determination. By the time the sun set behind the hills on their fourth day of travel, the rancher and the girl had formed a partnership built on trust and respect. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and fear together, and they had emerged stronger for it. The rancher knew that the journey was not yet over, but he also knew that the girl was ready for the challenges that lay ahead. She had found her voice again, and with it a sense of hope that had seemed impossible just days before. As they settled down for the night, the girl looked up at the stars, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in a long time. The rancher sat beside her, keeping watch, and she felt safe in a way that she had never experienced before. For the first time since her capture, she believed that a better future was possible, and that it was within her reach. The journey to safety was far from over, but the first steps had been taken. The young Apache girl was no longer alone, and the man who had rescued her had shown that courage, kindness, and determination could defy the expectations of the world around them. Together they would continue forward, facing whatever challenges came next with strength, hope, and unwavering resolve. The sun was just peeking over the distant hills as the rancher and the young Apache girl continued their journey. The desert was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of small animals, and the wind sweeping over the rocks and sand. Despite the early hour, the heat was already beginning to rise, making the long journey ahead even more challenging. The girl walked beside the rancher, her small bundle of belongings clutched tightly in her arms. She was tired, sore, and thirsty, but her spirit had grown stronger in the days since he had rescued her, staff catching the land ahead for any signs of danger. He knew that as they approached areas closer to Apache territory, the risks would increase. There were travelers, lawmen, and others who might see the girl and try to take her back. There were also wild animals, snakes, and other natural hazards of the land. But he was determined to see her safely to a place where she would be protected and free. He glanced at the girl, who walked quietly beside him, and offered a small smile. "You're doing very well," he said softly. "Just keep your eyes open and stay close."
"We'll get there soon." The girl nodded, though her legs were beginning to ache. She trusted him more than anyone she had met in a long time, but she was also aware of the dangers that surrounded them.
Each shadow and each sound made her heart race, reminding her of the life she had lost. Still, the rancher's steady presence gave her courage, and she found herself moving forward, step by step.
By mid-morning, they reached a small, narrow canyon.
The canyon walls rose steeply on either side, casting shadows that provided welcome relief from the heat. The rancher led the girl carefully into the canyon, keeping close to the rock walls to remain hidden. He knew that anyone watching from the hills would have difficulty seeing them in the shadows.
The girl followed silently, her eyes scanning the area as he had taught her.
They moved slowly, the girl learning to pay attention to every sound. The snapping of twigs, the rustle of dry grass, and the distant calls of birds.
The rancher pointed out small details she might have missed. Footprints in the sand that showed where animals had passed, patches of plants that indicated water nearby, and signs of human activity that could mean danger.
The girl absorbed everything, her mind sharpening as she realized that survival required both courage and careful observation. As they walked deeper into the canyon, the girl finally spoke. "Do you think they are following us?" she asked, her voice low and cautious. The rancher shook his head slowly.
"I don't know," he admitted. "But it doesn't matter. We will keep moving and stay out of sight. The important thing is that we remain careful and prepared."
She nodded, understanding the truth in his words. It was not enough to hope that danger would pass them by.
They had to be smart, alert, and ready to respond if anything went wrong. The rancher's calm confidence was reassuring, and the girl found herself relying on his judgment more and more.
By late afternoon, they reached a small stream hidden among rocks and shrubs. The water was clear and cool, a welcome relief after the long, hot day. The rancher knelt by the stream, filling a small container for the girl. She drank slowly, savoring the refreshing taste and feeling the heat leave her body. Reyes. He watched her carefully, ensuring that she drank enough but did not drink too quickly. "This is good," he said, smiling faintly. "Water is very important. It keeps us strong and alert." The girl looked up at him, a small smile forming on her lips. Rest. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of safety and hope. She was learning to trust again, to believe that there were people who would act with kindness and courage. The rancher's presence had become a source of strength, and she began to feel that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they continued along the stream, the terrain became more challenging. The hills grew steeper, and the path narrower. At one point, they had to carefully cross a rocky slope, using their hands to steady themselves on jagged stones. The girl hesitated, afraid of falling, but the rancher guided her with gentle hands and steady words of encouragement. "You can do this!" he said, breath.
One step at a time. I'm right here with you. She took a deep breath and followed his lead, carefully placing her feet on the stable rocks.
By step, she made it across, feeling a small surge of confidence. The rancher nodded approvingly, and for the first time in a long while, she felt proud of herself. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hills, they found a small sheltered area among the rocks to rest for the night. The rancher built a small fire, careful to keep it low so that it would not attract attention. The girl sat beside him, shivering slightly from exhaustion, and watched the flames dance in the darkening light.
You've done very well today, the rancher said.
You're learning quickly, and that will help you stay safe. The girl nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. She had come a long way in a short time, and each day brought new lessons and new challenges. She was beginning to see that she was capable of more than she had realized, and that the world, while dangerous, could also hold moments of safety and kindness. The night was quiet, but the rancher remained alert. He kept watch while the girl rested, listening for any signs of danger. But occasionally she would wake, startled by a sound, but he would calm her with a reassuring hand and a few gentle words. Over time, she began to relax, trusting that he would protect her. The next morning, they resumed their journey. The rancher led them through hidden paths, avoiding main trails and towns. They moved quietly, careful not to attract attention. The girl was learning quickly, noticing details that she had once overlooked and understanding how to stay out of sight. She began to feel more confident in her abilities, and the rancher encouraged her at every step.
By the third day, they encountered a small group of travelers on horseback.
The rancher quickly guided the girl behind a large boulder, keeping them both hidden. The travelers rode past, unaware of the two figures crouched in the shadows. The girl held her breath, feeling the familiar rush of fear, but also a growing sense of courage. She was learning how to stay calm in dangerous situations, and each experience made her stronger. After the travelers passed, the rancher spoke softly. You see, staying alert and using your surroundings helps us stay safe. You are learning quickly, and that makes all the difference. The girl nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. She was beginning to understand that survival required both courage and intelligence. The rancher's guidance had given her the tools she needed to navigate the world, and she was determined to use them. As they moved closer to Apache territory, the landscape changed. The hills gave way to open plains, dotted with shrubs and small trees. The rancher slowed his pace, knowing that they were approaching areas where the girl could find safety and protection among her own people. The girl's heart beat faster with anticipation. She was close to a place where she could finally feel at home again, where she could be free from the constant fear and uncertainty that had plagued her since her capture. But the journey was not over. They still had to navigate unfamiliar terrain and remain cautious of those who might try to interfere. The rancher continued to teach the girl about the land, pointing out signs of danger and explaining how to read the environment for clues. She absorbed everything, her mind alert and focused, ready to respond to any challenge that came their way. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they found a small clearing to rest for the night. The rancher built a small fire, careful to keep it low and controlled. The girl sat beside him, watching the flames and feeling a sense of peace she had not experienced in a long time. She was learning to trust again, to believe in the possibility of safety and freedom. You've grown so much in just a few days, the rancher said quietly. Grace, you're stronger than you realize, and you're learning to protect yourself.
The girl smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride and hope. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had survived.
Desk. She was beginning to see that she could overcome obstacles and that she had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead.
As they settled down for the night, the girl looked up at the stars, feeling a sense of calm and wonder.
The rancher kept watch, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. She felt safe in a way she had not felt since her capture, and she began to believe that a better future was possible. The journey to safety had been long and difficult, but the girl had grown stronger with each passing day. She had learned to trust, to observe, and to act with courage and intelligence. The rancher's guidance had given her the tools she needed to survive, and she was determined to use them. As they lay beneath the stars, the girl realized that the journey was not just about reaching a physical destination. It was about reclaiming her strength, her voice, and her sense of hope. Best. She had been through unimaginable fear and hardship, but she was learning to rise above it. With the rancher by her side, she felt that anything was possible. The next morning, they would continue their journey toward Apache territory, facing new challenges and dangers along the way. But for now, under the quiet night sky, the young girl allowed herself to rest, knowing that she was not alone, and that she was finally moving toward freedom, safety, and a chance to reclaim her life. The morning air was crisp as the rancher and the young Apache girl approached the edge of the plains. The hills behind them faded into a soft, dusty haze, and in the distance, the open lands of Apache territory began to appear. Wide stretches of green, dotted with small settlements, streams, and groves of trees. For the first time in weeks, the girl felt a glimmer of hope so strong that it made her heart race with anticipation. She glanced at the rancher who had been her guide, protector, and teacher throughout this long, dangerous journey. Breaths. "Are we almost there?" she asked quietly, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and excitement. The rancher smiled gently. "Yes," he said. "Just a little further and you'll be safe among your people." The girl's legs trembled slightly, not from exhaustion but from the overwhelming mix of relief and anxiety. But now that it was close, it felt almost unreal. The journey had been long, filled with danger, learning, and trust-building. She had come a long way from the frightened child in the cage at the town square. Every step had been hard, but each one had strengthened her, teaching her courage, patience, and resilience. As they moved closer to the settlements, the rancher became even more cautious. "We must remain careful," he said. "Not everyone may welcome us immediately, and we don't know who might be watching." The girl nodded, her eyes scanning the surroundings as he had taught her. She could sense the change in the land. The air was fresher, the soil richer, the signs of life everywhere. Birds called from the trees and small animals moved through the underbrush. This was a land of safety and abundance, a stark contrast to the harsh deserts and hills they had crossed. Rest. Suddenly the rancher paused, holding up his hand to stop her. Ahead, a group of men were riding along a distant path. The rancher squinted, observing their movements carefully. "They don't look hostile," he whispered, "but we should wait until they pass before we move forward." The girl crouched behind a small bush, her heart pounding. She remembered the lessons the rancher had taught her about observation, patience, and the importance of staying hidden until it was safe. Slowly the men rode past, their attention focused elsewhere. The rancher waited until they were gone before signaling the girl to continue. Finally, after several more cautious steps, they reached the first signs of the Apache settlements. Small dwellings, smoke rising from cooking fires, and children playing in open spaces came into view. The girl's eyes widened and a small smile formed on her lips. She could feel the presence of her people, their culture, and their safety surrounding her. For the first time since her capture, she allowed herself to hope. The rancher approached the settlement carefully, keeping his distance while observing the reaction of the people. Some villagers stopped what they were doing and looked toward him, curious about the strangers in their land. The rancher dismounted and held out his hand in a gesture of peace, ensuring that the girl stayed behind him for safety. An elder of the community stepped forward, a woman with kind eyes and a strong presence. "Who are you, and why are you here?" she asked, her voice firm but not unkind. The rancher bowed slightly. "I am a traveler," he said. "I have brought this young girl to you. Best. She has been through much danger, and she needs a safe place with her people. I risked my life to bring her here." The elder studied him carefully, her eyes moving from the rancher to the girl. She could see the exhaustion, the fear, and the relief etched on the young girl's face. Slowly, she nodded, recognizing the courage it must have taken for this man to act against the norms of others and help a child in need. The girl, seeing the acceptance in the elder's eyes, stepped forward hesitantly. The elder extended her hand, and the girl took it, tears filling her eyes. She had finally reached a place where she belonged, where she could feel safe, and where she could begin to heal. The rancher watched quietly, feeling a sense of relief and fulfillment. He had risked everything to rescue this child, and now he could see that his actions had not been in vain. But he also knew that his work was not entirely done. He needed to ensure that the girl was fully welcomed and that her safety would be maintained. The elder spoke to the girl's family and other community members, explaining how she had been rescued and emphasizing the courage of the rancher who had brought her home. There were murmurs of surprise and admiration. Some people were amazed that a stranger had risked so much for a child who was not his own. Others were cautious but grateful for the safe return of one of their own. The girl's parents, who had feared they would never see their daughter again, stepped forward. Their eyes filled with tears as they embraced her, holding her tightly and whispering words of love and reassurance. The girl clung to them, overwhelmed by the emotions that had been building up inside her for weeks. She could finally cry, laugh, and breathe freely without fear. The rancher stood slightly apart, allowing the family to have their moment, but the girl turned to him and spoke softly, breath. "Thank you," she said. I will never forget what you did for me." The rancher smiled gently. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "The important thing is that you are safe and with your family." In the days that followed, the girl began to settle back into life among her people. She shared her experiences, and the elder ensured that she received the care, guidance, and protection she needed. The rancher stayed nearby for a short while, helping to ensure that she was fully integrated and safe. He taught the community small skills he had used to protect her, sharing his knowledge of observation, awareness, and resilience. Word of the rancher's courageous act began to spread beyond the settlement. Travelers passing through spoke of the man who had risked everything to save a young Apache girl, defying the expectations and prejudices of others in the West. Some criticized him for interfering, but many admired his bravery and moral conviction. He had shown that one person's actions could make a profound difference, even in a world that often turned a blind eye to injustice. The girl, now safe, began to regain her strength, confidence, and voice. She shared stories of her journey with younger children, teaching them lessons of courage, patience, and trust. She began to smile again, laugh, and play freely, knowing that she had survived not only through her own determination but also through the kindness of someone willing to stand up for what was right. The rancher, having ensured that she was safe and cared for, prepared to leave. The girl and her family thanked him repeatedly, and the elder of the community offered words of respect and gratitude. The rancher felt a sense of pride, knowing that his actions had created a lasting impact. As he rode away from the settlement, the girl waved from a distance, her eyes shining with hope and happiness. The rancher looked back one last time, knowing that he had helped change her life forever. He had defied expectations, faced danger, and stood up for what was right, and in doing so had proven that courage, compassion, and integrity could overcome even the harshest circumstances. The journey had been long, difficult, and filled with uncertainty, but it had led to a powerful outcome. The young Apache girl was safe, reunited with her people, and able to begin a new chapter in her life. The rancher's actions had shown that one person could indeed make a difference, and that moral courage could defy even the rigid expectations of society. In the quiet of the evening, as the rancher rode back toward his own home, he reflected on the journey. He thought of the girl's courage, the challenges they had faced together, and the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular. He understood that the impact of his actions would ripple through the community, inspiring others to act with integrity and kindness. The girl, safe in her home and surrounded by her family, began to rebuild her life, but she learned to trust, to hope, and to believe that there was goodness in the world. She had survived great danger, and she had been shown that courage and kindness could prevail, even in the darkest moments. As days turned into weeks, the story of the rancher's brave act became well known. Travelers shared it far and wide, and the tale of one man defying the West to protect a child became a lesson in morality, courage, and the power of individual action. The young Apache girl grew stronger with each passing day, carrying with her the memory of the man who had risked everything to ensure her freedom. Though the rancher had returned to his own life, the bond they had shared remained. He had given her not only safety but also hope and the knowledge that she could trust in the goodness of others. She would carry those lessons with her forever, and the story of their journey would be remembered as an example of courage, compassion, and the power of doing what is right even when it is difficult. In the end, the young Apache girl had been rescued, not just from immediate danger but from a life of fear and uncertainty. She had been given the chance to reclaim her identity, her family, and her future. The rancher's actions had shown that one person, willing to act with courage and integrity, could truly defy expectations and change a life forever. And as the sun set over the hills, casting a golden glow over the land, the girl looked toward the horizon, feeling free, safe, and filled with hope for the future. A future that she would face with strength, resilience, and the memory of the man who had saved her.